People think betrayal sounds like glass shattering. But it's quieter than that. Sometimes, it's just the absence of your name in her smile. There's this moment, right before a storm, where everything holds still. The wind dies, birds go quiet, and the trees seem to brace themselves. That's the moment I lived in for about 3 months, suspended in eerie stillness, before the truth finally broke the surface like a cracked mirror. Her name is Claire. We'd been married for 12 years. College sweethearts, one of those couples people call solid. We owned a modest home just outside Denver, both worked full-time, she in marketing, me in software consulting. Our son turned 9 last summer. I still remember the party we threw, backyard full of laughter and foam dart guns. Claire was radiant that day, the way sunlight plays tricks on memory. But after that, something shifted. It started with the phone face down at dinner. Then, the new gym bag. The late nights at client meetings. At first, I shrugged it off. We'd both been busy. Stress can change people. But you don't just feel distance in a relationship, you start breathing it in. Then came the silence. Not the angry kind. No slammed doors. No sharp words. Just silence. Her eyes didn't hold mine as long. Her good night kisses faded into air. And when she smiled at her phone, it wasn't reflex, it was intimacy. Directed elsewhere. I didn't confront her. I didn't rage. Something colder settled in me. I started watching. Not like a jealous man. More like a scientist taking notes. I began documenting her absences. Gas receipts didn't match her locations. Her office light on at 10 p.m. when she claimed she was already home. The tipping point came when I checked our shared laptop's backup files and found a set of photos, screenshots of text messages. Nothing graphic, nothing that would trigger a YouTube censor. But personal. Romantic. Familiar. The man was someone I knew. Not well, but enough. A colleague from a nearby firm we'd met at a couple of networking events. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, heart rate calm, mind churning like a chessboard mid-match. I didn't sleep. But I made a plan. Over the next few weeks, I became the ghost of our marriage. Present, polite, and utterly invisible. I booked a consultation with a top-tier family law attorney named Olivia Brandt, former prosecutor, known for her quiet composure and surgical precision. I didn't want drama. I wanted clarity, custody, and control. Olivia told me something I never forgot: the first one to move silently usually wins. I gathered everything: texts, GPS logs, phone records. Never accessed her personal accounts, never crossed legal lines. I wanted my case tight, clean, unshakable. Meanwhile, Claire seemed happier. The irony didn't escape me. She thought I was slipping away emotionally, maybe even preparing to leave. In a way, I was. But not in the way she assumed. And then came the twist I hadn't expected: she began rewriting the story before I ever told it. I started noticing changes in how our mutual friends acted around me. Cold greetings. Hesitant conversations. Then I saw her posts, vague, subtle, but pointed. Quotes about emotional neglect, captions like "sometimes love just isn't enough" over smiling selfies. I'd become the villain in a narrative I hadn't even participated in. I didn't react. Not publicly. Not yet. Instead, I doubled down. Spoke less. Observed more. Let her think I was unraveling quietly, maybe even too ashamed to fight back. That's what she wanted, a soft exit, with sympathy on her side. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because what she didn't know was that the storm was already here. And I was the stillness before it. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't kick down doors or scream across kitchen tables. It sharpens the knife in silence, draws the map in pencil, and moves the pieces without fanfare. I was done reacting. From that moment on, I became surgical. The lawyer, Olivia Brandt, was meticulous. Her office sat in a glass tower downtown, sleek and cold, like the strategy she laid out for me. I slid the evidence across her desk. Her eyes scanned each page, slow and deliberate, the way someone reads a confession written in invisible ink. "You have leverage," she said, lifting a photo of one of the messages. "She doesn't know you're aware. That's a powerful thing, if you can keep it that way." I could. I already had. We began crafting a custody strategy. Not just for now, but long term. Documentation was everything: Claire's late-night disappearances, her emotional absence from parenting, her bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals labeled "client dinner" on nights I knew she wasn't with any client. Claire had been careful, I'll give her that. But not careful enough. Back home, I kept up appearances. Smiled when she walked in. Picked up our son from soccer practice. Cooked dinners. Asked about her day like I hadn't already mapped it out in my head. I became an actor in a play I didn't audition for. My lines were rehearsed. My expression, controlled. She'd glance at me sometimes, confused by my stillness. I could tell it unsettled her. That was the point. A few nights later, I caught her standing on the back porch, phone pressed to her ear, voice hushed. She laughed, an intimate, flirty kind of laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. It didn't sting the way I thought it would. I just listened. Memorized the cadence. Filed it away. When she came in, I handed her a glass of wine. She blinked, surprised. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "Just felt like it," I said. Her hand lingered on mine for a second longer than it should have. Guilt, maybe. Or uncertainty. She smiled, soft and small, and for a brief second, I saw the woman I used to know. But that version of her had already left the house long ago, she'd just forgotten to pack her shadow. That night, while she showered, I checked the spare phone I'd hidden in the garage. Not for spying. Just for storage. Audio memos. Notes. A timeline. I wasn't collecting secrets, I was collecting truth. Truth, when properly documented, doesn't just set you free. It can bury the lie. Claire had started becoming performative. Posting more online. Captions about resilience and personal growth. Pictures with our son, shared at just the right time, perfectly lit, smiles that didn't reach her eyes. To the world, she was trying. To me, she was rehearsing her alibi. Friends started messaging me less. One even called to ask if I was doing okay, the kind of voice people use when they think you're losing grip. I could hear the second-hand concern. "Claire said you've been distant. Are you depressed?" I didn't defend myself. Didn't argue. Let them believe whatever version they wanted. You don't correct the record while the other person is still writing fiction. You wait until they publish it. Then you turn the page. 3 weeks in, Claire asked if we could have a talk. She used that word like it was a scalpel. We sat across from each other in the living room. She crossed her legs like she was settling in for a therapy session. I leaned back, arms folded, like I'd already read the transcript. "I feel like we're drifting," she said. Her voice was soft. Practiced. You've been quiet lately." "I've been thinking," I replied. "That's all." She tilted her head. "Are you happy?" I looked her straight in the eyes and said the truest thing I'd said all month. "I'm at peace." That unsettled her more than any accusation would have. She wanted a fight. A breakdown. A betrayal she could point to and say, "See? He stopped trying." But I wasn't going to give her that. You don't go to war with fire when you already own the flood. That night, while she slept, I lay next to her with my eyes open, the silence between us thicker than air. I thought about all the things I could do. Blast her on social media. Forward screenshots to her friends. Confront the other man with a cold stare and a colder warning. But no. That would be giving her the ending she wanted, something dramatic. Something that let her wear the victim's crown while the crowd applauded her courage. I was going to write the ending myself. One line at a time. You don't always need to set fire to a house to watch it fall. Sometimes, all it takes is removing one brick at a time, quietly, carefully, until the weight of the lie brings it down on its own. People always imagine revenge as this fiery explosion, yelling, public exposure, burning bridges and reputations. But real revenge, the kind that truly leaves a mark, doesn't shout. It vanishes. By week 5, I had started erasing myself. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped commenting on her Instagram captions. I let her monologues hang in the air, unchallenged and unanswered. At first, she seemed relieved, freedom disguised as emotional distance. But eventually, silence becomes heavier than anger. And in silence, people start to hear the echo of their own guilt. Claire began checking in more. Cooking dinners she hadn't made in years. Picking up my favorite snacks from the grocery store. Smiling too much, too often. It was like watching a cover band try to play your favorite song, off-key and 2 beats behind. I didn't confront her. I just let her wonder why I wasn't. My attorney, Olivia, and I had finished the framework. I'd created a digital folder, backed up in 3 locations, with everything we needed, financial inconsistencies, absence logs, screenshots, even character references from school staff about my role in our son's day-to-day life. It wasn't just about divorce. It was about narrative. Perception is everything in court, Olivia told me during one of our meetings. You're calm. You're involved. You're not retaliatory. That gives us power. It was the first time anyone had used that word in reference to me since this all began. Power. It didn't feel like power, though. It felt like standing still in a windstorm, trying not to fall over. But I had one thing Claire didn't, foresight. She was too busy curating her image to realize I was building an exit so clean, it would leave no room for her to paint me as the villain. I started making quiet changes. Bank accounts, moved half into a private account under my name. Updated my will. Adjusted the power of attorney. Met with a real estate agent, just in case. All under the radar. All documented. I didn't change passwords. Didn't lock her out of anything. That would have been too loud. Instead, I started keeping a small notebook in the glove box of my truck, dates, observations, entries that would read like a case study on trust erosion. Claire had no idea. She was still too busy performing. One evening, she posted a photo of the 2 of us at dinner, smiling, glasses raised. The caption read, "Love isn't perfect, but it's ours." I was sitting right across from her when she posted it. I smiled back at her. And in that moment, I understood just how hollow it all was. The next morning, she was on the phone again. I could hear her in the upstairs hallway, soft-voiced, giggling like a teenager. She used to sound that way with me. Now it was a language I didn't understand. When she came downstairs, she looked at me the way a thief studies the safe they've already cracked, making sure the combination hadn't changed. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm good," I replied, flipping through the morning paper. She tilted her head. "You're calm lately." "Peace does that to a man," I said, folding the paper neatly. She stared at me, just for a second too long. I think that's when it first hit her. I wasn't trying to fix us anymore. I wasn't even in it anymore. I was already gone. I just hadn't packed. A few days later, I scheduled a quiet meeting with the school counselor, just me, no agenda. I let them know, confidentially, that Claire and I were navigating some personal matters, and I wanted to make sure our son had continuity, that his life stayed uninterrupted. It wasn't about turning her into the bad guy. It was about making sure people saw me. The steady one. The involved one. The parent thinking 3 moves ahead. That's when I started noticing something new in Claire's eyes. Fear. Not fear of being caught. She was too far into the performance to believe she'd fall. It was the fear of losing control of the story. Claire had always been good at spinning narratives. To our friends. Our families. Even to me, once. But something was cracking in her performance. She couldn't figure out why the audience wasn't applauding anymore. She tried harder. Posted more. Scheduled a family photo shoot, insisted we host a dinner party. I said yes to everything. I smiled in every photo. I poured wine at the table and asked our guests how their kids were doing in school. All while knowing the papers were being finalized. All while knowing the house she was trying so hard to decorate with fake happiness would soon no longer be hers. Not entirely. The night before I was scheduled to serve her, we stood on the porch watching the sunset. The air was still. Crisp. She leaned into me and whispered, "I miss us." I looked at her, studied her face, the shape of her mouth, the curve of her jaw. I remembered loving her once. Truly, deeply. I didn't say anything. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest answer a person can give. Some people destroy you with loud betrayals. Others just do it slowly, by becoming someone else while you're still in the room. I served her on a Wednesday. Not for poetic reasons. Not because it symbolized the middle of something. I served her on a Wednesday because it was quiet, predictable, forgettable. The kind of day she wouldn't see coming. The envelope was hand-delivered to her office. Olivia made sure it was done without drama, no sheriff, no raised voices, just a firm handoff and a signature received. The kind of professionalism that leaves no room for victimhood. No room to spin it. By noon, Claire had read the first sentence of the petition. By 12:02, she texted me. Why? That was the beginning of her unraveling. I didn't respond. Not out of pettiness. But because there was nothing left to explain. She already knew why. Maybe not all the details, but in her bones, she knew. By 3 p.m., she'd sent a second message. Can we talk before we make this a war? War. Interesting word choice. I was never at war. War implies a struggle between two sides. I wasn't fighting. I was leaving. Cleanly. Legally. Quietly. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a small Airbnb outside of town, wood floors, no TV, just stillness and a kitchen that smelled like cedar. I lit a fire in the corner stove and watched it burn until the logs crumbled into ash. It was the first time in months I'd felt alone without being lonely. Around midnight, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a post. Claire had uploaded a photo of our son, him smiling with his favorite hoodie on, standing beside a pumpkin he carved at school. Caption, trying to stay strong for this one. The likes rolled in fast. Friends, cousins, co-workers, all commenting with virtual hugs and heart emojis. One even wrote, "Whatever's happening, Claire, you don't deserve it." And there it was. The attempt to steal the narrative. To paint herself as the one left behind. The one wronged. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't respond. Didn't post a counter. Didn't message our friends. I let the story spread like wet paint on the walls of her false little house. Because I knew the rain was coming. And fake paint never holds. The next day, she called me directly. I let it ring out. Then she left a voicemail. Hey. I don't know what you think you've seen or heard, but this doesn't have to go down like this. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. I still love you. She said it like someone remembering a line in a play they hadn't rehearsed in a while. I forwarded the voicemail to Olivia. She added it to the file. Saturday morning, Claire showed up at my Airbnb. I knew she would. She always liked control too much to let silence sit. I watched her from the window as she stepped out of her car, clutching her coat around her like armor. Her eyes scanned the porch, then locked on the door as if expecting a battle to begin the second she knocked. I opened it before she had the chance. Her face dropped. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice almost fragile. I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't sit right away. Just hovered near the fireplace, eyes darting around the room like she was searching for pieces of herself. When she finally spoke, it came out fast. "You didn't even talk to me. You just served me. Like I'm some stranger." "No," I said, calmly. "Strangers don't lie to each other for months." She flinched. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did." Silence. "I didn't mean for it to go as far as it did," she tried. "It always goes as far as it's allowed." She sank onto the couch, rubbing her hands together. "Was it someone?" she asked. "Is that why you're doing this?" I actually laughed at that one. Not loud. Just once, under my breath. "No, Claire. I didn't leave you because I found someone else. I left you because I finally found myself again." The conversation didn't last long. I told her everything she needed to know about the process, what Olivia would be requesting, what the court was likely to see. I explained that I wasn't after her destruction. Just the truth. Just fairness. Just peace. She tried to cry. I could tell it was real, but I'd already mourned this marriage months ago. Her tears were late to the funeral. As she left, she turned at the door and said, "I never meant for you to find out this way." I nodded. "And I never meant to become someone you could lie to." That was the last time she tried to reach me in person. In the weeks that followed, the cracks started to widen. Friends started calling me, not to ask what happened, but to apologize. Apparently, some of Claire's stories weren't adding up. A mutual friend ran into her client from those late-night meetings, and he didn't know her name. Her posts got more cryptic. Then more frequent. Then suddenly stopped altogether. The silence was back. But this time, it wasn't mine. It was hers. The first sign was her face at school pickup. 2 weeks after the papers were served, I showed up for our son's parent-teacher conference. Claire was already there, seated at one end of the table, posture straight, hands folded like a woman preparing for cross-examination. She smiled when she saw me. That trained, artificial kind of smile. I gave her a polite nod and sat down. The teacher started going over our son's progress, his reading levels, his social skills, his creativity. Claire chimed in with small praises, the way she used to when things were normal. I added a few remarks of my own. On the surface, it was smooth. But underneath, I could feel it, the shift. The teacher spoke to me more directly. She referred to examples I had been part of, times I picked our son up early, helped with a school event, emailed about a project. Claire noticed it too. I could see it in her eyes. She was no longer the parent in the center. She was adjacent now. That weekend, a mutual friend, Sarah, invited our son to her kid's birthday party. We both showed up. Not planned. Just awkward. People greeted me first. And longer. I wasn't wearing bitterness. I wasn't reciting a story. I just showed up with grace and a calm presence. That's what made the shift so powerful. Because Claire still looked like someone explaining. Even when no one was asking. Online, her presence thinned. The curated posts became irregular. The inspirational quotes dried up. No more vague references to healing or moving forward. People had stopped reacting. Some had started unfollowing. Not because they knew everything. Just because something about the act wore thin. People can smell when a performance turns stale. She tried reaching out again the following week. A message. Just one line. "This is killing me." I didn't respond. Because she wasn't talking about the marriage. She was talking about the loss of control. Olivia called me one afternoon with an update. "She's resisting," she said. Not denying the facts, just dragging her feet on the paperwork. Trying to renegotiate things that aren't really up for negotiation. I asked what that meant for the timeline. "It means she still thinks there's a way to rewrite the ending. But don't worry. We're ahead of her in every direction." I trusted that. Because at this point, I'd built something she couldn't touch, momentum. The court date was set. We agreed on joint custody, but Olivia had pushed for me to be the primary residence parent. With the evidence we'd collected, the judge agreed. I'd remain in the home. Claire would move out by the end of the month. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. But I did walk into the kitchen, pour myself a coffee, and sit down in the same chair where Claire had once told me she needed more space. She had space now. But it wasn't the kind she wanted. The day she came to pack, I wasn't there. I took our son to the Science Museum and gave Olivia's assistant permission to supervise the movers. When we came home that evening, everything felt lighter. Emptier. But not in a painful way. More like a room that had finally exhaled after holding its breath too long. Our son noticed a few missing things. I told him Mom was going to live in a different house, and that it didn't mean she loved him any less. He nodded. Kids understand things we overcomplicate. He just wanted dinner and a movie. So we made grilled cheese, and I let him pick the film. We laughed a lot that night. I hadn't laughed like that in months. Later that evening, I walked into the room Claire had once used as her home office. Empty shelves. No more scented candles. No more faux inspirational mugs. Just silence. But this time, it wasn't eerie. It was clean. I opened the window. Let the night air in. Sat in her old chair and closed my eyes. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about her. I was just thinking about tomorrow. The house was still. Not silent from tension, but from peace. There's a difference. I woke up early now. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. There was something therapeutic about being awake before the world expected anything of you. I'd make coffee, open the back door, and just breathe. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. Claire had moved out 2 weeks ago. There were no final conversations. No attempts at last-minute closure. Just a slow fade, like background noise you suddenly realize has been gone for a while. Our son was adapting. Kids are resilient, but not immune. I watched him closely, listened for signs of confusion, withdrawal. But mostly, he seemed lighter too. One night, while brushing his teeth, he looked at me through the mirror and said, "You seem happier, Dad." I didn't know what to say to that. So I smiled. "Yeah, Bud. I think I am." I started going back to the gym. Not for vanity. Not for revenge. But because I needed to remember what it felt like to take care of myself. I'd spent years pouring everything into the marriage, into the illusion, into trying to keep something alive that had already died. Now, I was reinvesting in me. The weights didn't care who lied. The treadmill didn't ask who left. It just held you accountable. Every rep, every mile, it was a small declaration, I'm still here. I stopped checking her social media. Not out of restraint. Because I just didn't care anymore. My friends, real ones, started circling back. The ones who had kept their distance during the mess. I didn't blame them. People get awkward around divorce. They think it's contagious. We had beers again. Laughed again. One of them, James, looked at me across the bar one night and said, "Man, you're different. Calmer. More, you." I raised my glass. I lost myself for a while. Guess I'm under renovation. We clinked. Therapy helped. Not every week. Not forever. But I needed a space where I didn't have to explain myself. A place where someone smarter than me could draw the lines between events I hadn't even realized were connected. Like how I'd accepted too little in the name of keeping peace. Or how I mistook avoidance for maturity. Or how I let someone else's narrative define my worth for far too long. "I think I became invisible," I said once, midway through a session. My therapist leaned in. "Did she make you invisible? Or did you disappear trying to protect something that didn't want to be saved?" That one stayed with me. I started writing again. Just a journal. Thoughts. Fragments. Some mornings it was just a sentence. Other days, it was pages. Not for anyone else. Just for me. There's something grounding about writing things down, it pulls your mind out of the fog. One morning, I wrote, "She lied." I stayed. She left. I healed. We're not the same. That felt like a milestone. Claire sent me an email around that time. The subject line, "About everything." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't click. Didn't delete. I just archived it. Some doors don't need to be slammed shut. They just need to be locked. One night, I took a long look in the mirror. Not just a glance. A real look. The kind where you're not checking your hair or your collar. The kind where you actually see yourself. The lines that weren't there before. The eyes that had seen too much. The quiet strength behind them. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a man who'd been betrayed. I saw a man who survived. I didn't win back the woman I married. I didn't get the fairy tale ending. But I reclaimed something far more important. Myself. It had been 6 months since the papers were signed. The house had changed, not just in decoration, but in rhythm. There was no more hesitation when I walked through the front door. No second-guessing silence. No wondering what mood waited on the other side of the room. Just me. And my son. And whatever came next. Life, in its quiet, unfancy way, had moved on. I'd finished redecorating the guest room. Started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I'd made it a rule to cook dinner 3 nights a week, real meals, not frozen shortcuts. I even started dating again. Carefully. Slowly. No rebounds. Just conversations. Just connection. Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I ran into Claire. I was coming out of a bookstore downtown, paper bag in hand, coffee in the other. She was walking in the opposite direction, head down, earbuds in. She didn't see me until we were 10 feet apart. She paused. I did too. She pulled one earbud out, like that would somehow slow the moment down. "Hey," she said. Her voice was a little thinner than I remembered. No makeup. Hair tied back. A coat she never would have worn a year ago, simpler, more practical. "Hi." She looked like she wanted to say more. Maybe ask something. Maybe apologize. I could see the conversation rising up behind her eyes like a tide. But I didn't offer her a shoreline. Instead, I just smiled, soft, real, and said, "Hope you're doing okay." That disarmed her. She blinked. Nodded. "I'm getting there." "Good." She shifted awkwardly. "You look, well." I am. She looked down, then back up. He seems happy. Our son. He is. Thanks for asking. Another beat passed. And then I nodded once, not dismissively, but with finality. Take care of yourself, Claire. Then I turned and walked away. Not out of anger. Not out of triumph. But because I was finished. There was nothing left to unearth. No more apologies I needed. No more explanations to dissect. I didn't look back. That night, I stood on the porch. The air was brisk, the kind that makes you grateful for simple warmth. I looked out across the quiet street, the way I did back when all of this began, when I first felt the shift in our marriage, the tremor before the quake. But this time, I didn't feel dread. I felt light. There's a peculiar kind of strength in surviving something you never saw coming. And not just surviving, but coming out of it more yourself than you've ever been. No theatrics. No grand declarations. Just truth. Lived quietly. Reclaimed deliberately. I tucked my son in later that night. He asked if I could leave the door open just a little. Not because he was afraid, he just liked knowing someone was close. Before I walked out, he called after me. Dad? Yeah. I'm glad we're here. I smiled. Me too, buddy. I closed his door halfway and walked down the hall. The house felt full again, not with furniture, not with noise, but with intention. With peace. With presence. And as I passed by the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection. This time, I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Because I already knew who I was. And more importantly, who I wasn't anymore.